This is an entire podcast dedicated to quarterback prospect Dwayne Haskins. We break down his game, potential, and NFL team fits, and interview some of his coaches who know him best, including his high school coach, Buckeyes head coach Ryan Day, teammates of his at Ohio State, a mentor of his who happens to have played in a couple Pro Bowls, and of course, we interview Haskins himself.
But before we get to all of those interviews, let's get our opinion out there on the player. Dwayne Haskins in the mix, potentially be the first quarterback taken. It's been a little bit of a battle there between him and Kyler Murray. We'll see how that all shakes out. But just as a player, Buck, let's go generic here, floor and ceiling.
I think he can be a perennial Pro Bowler. I think he is the quarterback that has played successfully in the league for the last 30 years. I think he has tremendous arm talent. He does a great job of making throws with touch, timing, and anticipation. I think he's an excellent leader, smart when it comes to on the board with his IQ. And so I think his ceiling is really high in terms of being able to play at a Pro Bowl level. But at his worst, I would expect him to be just a solid starter that kind of leads his team and manages an offense and wins a ton of games.
Yeah, when I look at him, Buck, I think he's a little bit dependent on what's in front of him. I think he's somebody that's going to need some protection. Like every quarterback wants to be protected. But he's not somebody who's going to be able to create and move around and make things happen if he's under a lot of duress. So somebody I think you're going to get involved with a good tight end, some play action, and be able to protect him with a clean pocket, and he can accurately distribute the football. I don't know that I put him in that Pro Bowl category. I think he's going to be a solid starter. Now, the difference is I don't think the floor is very low. I think he's somebody with a higher floor, maybe a little bit lower ceiling for me. I think he's going to be a dependable starting quarterback. That's what I believe Dwayne Haskins is going to be at the next level. All right, let's get into some of these interviews. We've talked to people all around Dwayne Haskins that know him best to try and paint a clear picture of what Dwayne Haskins is, not only as a player, but as a person. And the first person we're going to talk to is Dwayne Haskins' high school coach from the Bullis School in Potomac, Maryland, Pat Salento. Coach, we'd like to do a deep dive here on the 360 series with people that know these guys well. Can you tell us the first time you met Dwayne and your first interaction with him?
I met Dwayne in the summer, right before his freshman year, 2012. He came down from New Jersey to throw with some of our receivers, and I was just in awe, amazed. The way the ball jumped off his hand was just absolutely amazing for a freshman in high school. He had incredible arm strength, and the balls was just unbelievable.
What about him mentally, Coach? I've heard a lot of people rave about him at Ohio State. They talk about how quickly he's able to digest their playbook, and you can really see it on tape when you study him, just how smart he is. How do you do acclimating it at a young age, coming out of junior high? How did he adapt to your offense there in high school?
Dwayne is a workaholic. He would come in every day at study hall, meet with me for 45 minutes on his own. And he would know what every person on the play was doing, every play. He just loves football. He was an straight A student here, had tons of options. And, besides school, it's really football.
And how about personality-wise? What's he like?
He's a very humble kid. And from the first day that I met him, he came in and said, I'm a distributor. I want to make everybody better. It's not about me. It's about everybody else. And you don't get that out of a kid, especially, in ninth grade, who, has an extreme talent.
Well, Buck, it's always great we get a chance to talk to those high school coaches. I feel like they get a chance to really be around these young guys as they're maturing and developing as not only just players but as young men.
Yeah, those guys know them best, and they kind of set the foundation for what they will eventually become, and the fact that it kind of set them up to have success at the next level. Speaking of the next level, you and Aditi Kikwala had a chance to speak with Ohio State head coach Ryan Day at the Buckeyes Pro Day last week. I was able to interview him at the Combine in Indianapolis. Let's see what Coach Day thinks of his record-setting signal caller.
1 year as a starter, what do you feel are the biggest questions that you get asked about him that you sort of need to shoot down or respond to?
Yeah, really it's just at this time last year, he really hadn't played at all. He played in the one game, the Team Up North game. And so he didn't have any experience, no collegiate stars. Then comes into the season, throws 50 touchdown passes, has an unbelievable season. But it's, there's just not a lot of games. There's only so many games, and that's not his fault, but he just doesn't have a ton of experience. Other than that, when you look at his game and the way he really came on at the end of the year, it kind of speaks for itself.
As an athlete, I mean, that's been one of the concerns about him going forward, mobility-wise, is he going to be able to get away from it? Your take on Dwayne's athleticism?
Come a long way since he got here. Our strength staff and Mickey Marotti have done an unbelievable job getting him to where he is now. When you saw down the stretch, especially in the Maryland game, I think he ran it for 13 times in that game and showed that he can run when he needs to. He can get himself out of trouble. He's not going to be a runner. He's not a JT Barrett or a Braxton Miller. That's not his style. But as he's gotten more mature and as his body's grown, his legs have gotten stronger. He is able to extend plays. He is, I don't know how much zone read he'll do at the next level and things like that, but he can get himself out of trouble when he needs to.
All right, who we got next here? I think this is one of the more fascinating conversations around Dwayne Haskins, because I don't know how many people know this story, Buck, about a mentor in his life who, if you're an NFL fan, you will be very familiar with this name, and that is a former Pro Bowl cornerback, Shawn Springs. Can you start off, just fill us in on the backstory of where Dwayne grew up, where you met him, and where it went from there?
It was interesting because I've been knowing Dwayne since he was like 11, 12 years old. I was at a passing camp where my son was in the 6th grade and Dwayne was in the 7th grade. And next thing you know, my son gets up and he throws the ball like 30 yards. And I was like, oh, that's pretty good. Dwayne is right behind him and he throws the ball like 50 yards, like 12 years old. You're like, wow, that's like, who is this kid? Like that's pretty amazing, right?
But you took an even deeper interest beyond that camp. Like in looking about it, you would go and visit him in Jersey. And so from your time kind of being around him and being an influential presence in his life, how has Dwayne Haskins grown from the kid that you initially met to the kid that's been a star at Ohio State?
The kid I initially met was a kid who had potential, but obviously, like anything, you got to be in the right situation. And when I saw Dwayne, and I just told him, I said, hey, man, there might be an opportunity for this kid to come play down in the Washington, D.C. area. And I remember they came down for a weekend, and we were watching Good Counsel versus Gilman. And Good Counsel had a kid named Stephon Diggs, and Kendall Fuller was the star out there, and Gilman had a kid named Cyrus Jones, and it was a good game. And when Dwayne saw that, he was like, man, I need to be a part of that. And we were fortunate we were able to get the family to want to move down and to the Washington, D.C. area. Dwayne picked Bullis so that his sister Tamia can get a great education. And he matured. The biggest thing, Bucky, for a young player is you might have aspirations to want to play high major D1, but you got to have the work ethic. And that was the biggest thing I tried to install with Dwayne. He would ask me questions like, what was Tom Brady like? I was like, man, he was a hard worker. He might have ran a 5 flat, but he worked hard. And he was the first to build in get in the last to leave. So one thing I saw from Dwayne, from where you saw him as a 12-year-old to where he was 15 as a sophomore and 16 as a junior in high school, he just continued to get better and progress. And I think when he got to Ohio State, I think it was a little bit of opportunity to learn from JT, leadership, build his body up, and really go to the next level in college.
Sometimes quarterbacks like Dwayne can get kind of lumped in the box with some of the mobile quarterbacks that we've seen play the position, but he's a pure pocket passer, and you speak to his IQ. When you've been around him and you've watched him work, how much does he just love ball, and how smart is he when it comes to kind of understanding and breaking down the X's and O's?
I told people from a physical live arm standpoint of view, he's probably in the game, he's probably better than half the quarters I play with. No disrespect to like Brunell and Kittner and Hasselback and those guys, but I can only think of like maybe Tom Brady and Warren Moon that I can actually say, like, man, with his arm talent combined with his love for the game, Bucky, I mean, you talking about a gym rat. We hear that term talked about during basketball, but he's a gym rat when it was football. He crunched. I was a Playboy All-American with Peyton, and Peyton would ask a lot of questions, and that's why I feel when I'm around Dwayne. He's one of those guys, like, if he's around you and he knows that if he was around Mike Holmgren for like an hour, he's going to ask him every question about Brett Favre, how he can be better. He is a gym rat. He's one of those guys, you put him in a situation where he's around a veteran guy, he's just going to soak it up and he's going to learn.
All right, Buck, well, it's always fun to talk to the high school coaches and the mentors for these young players, but there's nothing better than talking to their college teammates. Those guys offer tremendous insight into these prospects. And we've both had a chance to do that. I was out there at the Ohio State Pro Day with Aditi Kinkhabwala, got a chance to visit with Nick Bosa, could be the first overall pick in the draft, as well as all Big Ten wide receiver Paris Campbell. So these guys were all teammates at Ohio State with Dwayne Haskins, and here's our conversation.
I want you to put your scouting hat on for a minute here, because we've talked about you, we've talked about your brother. There's another main attraction here today in your quarterback, in Dwayne Haskins. Can you speak to him a little bit as a leader for this team, this Buckeye team, taking over for J.T. Barrett, who was lauded for his leadership? Yeah. What was Dwayne like as a leader?
Dwayne was similar to me. He was more quiet, which I think is more when you're quiet and what you say really when you're not just spewing stuff out, what you say really means something, when somebody hears what you have to say and they're like, wow, he said something, so he must really mean it. So, I mean, from freshman year to sophomore year, he was definitely learning how to do it. But once he got the reins of the team and was going and making plays for the team, he came into his own big time.
At first, when Dwayne first came in, everyone knew he had talent. I think just where he lacked was just leadership. And he took an extraordinary role this past season in leadership. Everyone knew he could throw the ball. Everyone knew that he would be, this highly touted quarterback. But everyone, was concerned about his leadership. And just the way that he took the bull by the horns on this team, the things that he did just throughout each game. He always was poised in the huddle. He always kept guys going, kept spirits up. And that was huge for us, because we needed that from our quarterback, especially, with J.T. Barrett leaving and him being the leader that he was. Dwayne really stepped out and just became that leader that we needed for us.
All right, we've got a chance to visit with those around Dwayne Haskins. Let's get to the man himself. Bucky, you interviewed him in Atlanta on Super Bowl weekend. Aditi Kinkhabwala and I were in Columbus, Ohio for their pro day last week. We each had a chance to visit with Dwayne Haskins, and here's our conversation with the Buckeyes All-American quarterback.
Dwayne, so many people are excited about your potential and the things that you've been able to accomplish. Just tell me, what were you able to learn about yourself during your final season at Ohio State?
I got so much work to do, I feel like I get so much better. Going through every game, I learn something new about myself, but I know that I got a ways to go, but it's scary how good I feel like I can be.
In looking at your game at Ohio State, what would you say some of the things that you bring to the table for an NFL team?
Distributor. Just be able to throw all over the field, short, intermediate, deep, and then be able to have timing routes, deep routes. There's stuff that I can do all over the field to give an offense a very good dynamic.
Now, one of the questions that you were here as you continue to go forward in the process are, who are some of your role models? Who are some of the guys in the pros that you pattern your game after?
A lot of guys. I say Drew Brees' accuracy, Aaron Rodgers' off-platform throws, Tom Brady's leadership, the stuff that everybody does well, try to model into my game. I don't really say just one specific quarterback because everybody has their own thing that they do well, but I just love the game.
Obviously having watched you since you were a teenager coming through the camp circuit, I knew that you were a special player, but if you had to tell people what is going to allow you to be a special player in the pros, what would you say that one trait is?
I'm humble, man. There's knowing that I know I haven't reached the surface of what I can be. I'm going to keep working hard. I'm going to get everybody around me better. And just knowing that I'm going to push myself every day.
You've said repeatedly that it's very important to you to show teams how smart you are.
Yeah.
Why? Do you feel like that's been a knock on you?
It's not necessarily a knock just because of the stereotype, but the biggest thing is I feel like I'm smarter than the average quarterback. And for me, going through the combine, going through meetings after the combine, and going into the draft, just being able to retain information. So a lot of teams have me draw up their plays and be able to recite the plays to them, how it worked first protections, how certain coverages would go, and it'd be like 6 plays. I remember all the plays at one time, and I get no time to think about it. So it's pretty good. So I feel like I do a good job retaining the playbook.
I'm just curious from a scouting perspective where your weight was in the fall versus where your weight is now, because you look like a lean, mean fighting machine right now. What have you done? How much weight have you lost from the season to now?
No, so I was kind of heavy going into combine and had some good food after declaring, but just getting back into game shape. That's the biggest thing right now. So the season I played around 20, 24, 25. So right now I'm 25, 26. So by season I'll probably be like 22.
You went to dinner with the entire Giants contingent yesterday, right?
Yeah.
So I was told by a member of that group that you were extremely impressive.
That's nice.
What do you feel really distinguishes you from all the other quarterbacks?
I think this is the biggest thing with drafting a quarterback. You want a guy who'll be there for 10, 12, 15 years. And that's the guy you want to lead your franchise. So every meeting that I go to, I wanted to show how charismatic I am, how smart I am, and to be able to relate to everyone in the room. So being able to sit down with them last night was awesome. Had a great time. We had some good talks, ate some good food, and it was a great experience.
You played well throughout the season, but you found another level at the end, especially those last 3 games when you look at a rivalry game, a conference championship game, and then the big Rose Bowl over Washington. What really clicked for you to lock in and just take off at the end of the year like you did?
Yeah, so Coach Mick told me to be a dude, and that's his phrase. So,
for those that don't know, explain who Coach Mick is.
Coach Mick is our strength coach, and I would like to say he's probably the toughest guy I know. So for him, it was just be a dude. So there was times in the game where I had to take over. So not saying that I wasn't playing great in the beginning of the season, but I just took complete ownership of the team at that point as we got down the stretch trying to get back into the playoff run. And it was a lot of fun, honestly, to be able to have those games like that and finish at a high level. But it's all to the offensive line, receivers made all the great plays, and I just put it in the right spot and I just led them.
Dwayne, you talk about being able to take over. One of the things I've heard about you is that you didn't have a difficult game this year, that you never faced in-game adversity.
Yeah.
What is there any fear about that?
I watched the Maryland game, so I know you had some in-game adversity.
The biggest adversities was mostly off the field, and then just with football, it's always a battle. So you might win some, might lose some during the game in itself. So the biggest thing for me was be able to learn how to deal with not scoring every drive or defense not stopping one drive and be able to still win the game. So each game was a learning experience. We had some tough ones versus Penn State and Purdue and Michigan State, and they played us hard. But I felt like those games made us stronger. And as we got down the season, it was just more so fun for me to be able to grab the guys and be the guy that I wanted to be since the beginning of the season.
I think we've said this both on the record before. It doesn't matter who you have as a top guy. I think you have Haskins, I have Murray, but it comes down to fit as it does every year.
Yeah, it always comes down to fit, how someone fits within the scheme. I believe that Dwayne Haskins is the best of the quarterbacks now in the draft. I believe the Giants would be a terrific fit. Obviously, they're a team that needs to have a young quarterback in place. I believe they can surround him with enough weapons where he could succeed. It being from his area where he grew up, it would be a nice fit. I also think the Washington Redskins would also kind of suit his talent.
Yeah, look, in terms of fits, the Giants to me are the obvious best fit for him and where it makes the most sense. That would be at pick number 6. They also possess pick number 17. But, look, if you're in love with the quarterback, you take him at 6. You don't sit there and cross your fingers he's going to be there at 17. So that, to me, makes the most sense. You mentioned the Washington Redskins. I could see that a little bit. The team I wouldn't sleep on is the Cincinnati Bengals. I would not sleep on the Bengals. This is a Bengals team that has a long track record history. It's well known their affinity for Big Ten players, and this is somebody who's not far away there. In state, get a chance to see him and throwing the football. I think he's got a stronger arm than Andy Dalton. He can make some throws that Andy Dalton can't make. Now, he's not as athletic, doesn't move around quite as well as Dalton does, but you've got to take into account the price tag.
Click here to subscribe to the NFL YouTube channel and click here to subscribe to the Move the Sticks podcast.